All righty. I think we are live. Let me make sure this is on. I think we're good. 1 second. All righty. Looks like we are good to go here. Just get this popping. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Through His Eyes. Today is January 26, 2026, and we've got a great show for you. Should be pretty fun. Got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and I am really looking forward to getting into this stuff with you. Great. So a few things. I just wanted to do a slight format change. So I have been posting some clips of the show on various social media websites, which has been fun. If you don't want to watch the full show, it's boring. You can always, I try to clip just some of the best things that I talk about, some of my maybe hottest takes, and I try to put those all over social media just so it's, you can kind of digest little pieces of it. I would caution that sometimes those don't take my full take, because sometimes it can take me up to 10 minutes to get through a full take on something. So just make sure that if you do see those online, just know that there's probably more context, but that's kind of just a fun thing, go over a few topics there. Additionally, I'm going to do a slight format change. It's funny, I was actually feeling like kind of chastised last night by God, because I felt like at least in my last two shows, I was getting a little bit too political, a little bit not enough spiritual. And I know sometimes that can be more exciting or provocative. And some of those the comments that I've received can kind of show that. But I do want to also focus on religion a little bit more. So instead of, trying to paint every political thing as a spiritual thing, which I will continue to try to do, I'm going to do part of every show on just a spiritual topic. And, you can skip if you want. If you're watching the video later, you can always skip that part if you don't like it. But I think that I actually am much more qualified to speak on spiritual topics than political topics. As I'm not a full-time political researcher. I do my best and try to gather as much information as possible. But what I do is I do study my scriptures every day and, learn about Jesus every day. So I feel like I'm pretty qualified to speak on that. I'm going to still cover both, but I am going to at least devote part of every show to something that's purely spiritual going forward here. So that is something that I will be doing here going forward. And I think it'll be good because that's kind of the main point of this is, strengthen my connection with my Heavenly Father, and also so my kids, my future children, can see what connection I had with Him. And I feel like I get more out of it. So anyway, and then, my disclaimers, same as before. I don't represent any official political or religious organization. While I am affiliated with some of them on a personal level, I don't recognize any of them as something that I'm directly representing. So don't take my words to be the words of any specific political or religious organization. Additionally, these are just my opinions, and they should never incite violence. They're just opinions that I have, and they are open to change. One thing about me is it's pretty easy to, I don't want to say it's easy to change my mind, but I'm very open to changing my mind. If you leave a comment or do a chat of something that's controversial or contradictory to what I'm saying, I will always consider that opinion, think about it, digest it, and then I will make my judgment. That doesn't mean I'm going to constantly be flip-flopping all over the place. I have very strong convictions, especially about religion. But, definitely if with new evidence brought to light, things like that, I always am open to seeing all sides and potentially changing my opinion, especially because I don't feel committed to either political party or affiliation. And so, any policy, any stance, I can definitely see both sides. And I'm not saying you're going to change my mind, but sometimes it's happened. So anyway, let's see here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through some of the. I might as well just go through all the comments on my short form. I think it can be kind of funny, and also I can kind of either take a stance or step back from some of my previous claims. So I'm going to pull these out here just 1 second. I'll start with YouTube comments. So first one is from Murderbone. Nice username, bro. And he is talking about my take on our older generation owning homes and how hard it is for us to buy homes now as the younger generation, Gen Z, and also the millennials. The younger you are, the more difficult it is because prices are only going up and purchasing power is going down. Basically, he says $800,000 for a house, even $400,000 is still well out of reach for the majority of Americans, earning the same wages from 20 years ago and having 25% less buying power with those wages today. Very true. Now, I would say if you go to college and you actually get a pretty decent job, a lot of people weren't buying houses till they graduated college and got a good job. If you go to college, you get a good job, one that pays like a pretty good wage, obviously not minimum wage, but a pretty decent wage. But yeah. I think 400,000 is something that you could afford. 800,000, I think, is crazy. You need to have your own business or something for that, or be really well paid, an investment banker or something like that. But I think 400,000 is in reach for Americans. The other problem is it's hard, especially in the places that you actually want to live. Not in the middle of nowhere. 400,000 is just really hard to find, especially in states like California, Washington. Even states like Florida, you're lucky to get a condo or maybe even a small townhouse for 400,000. So anyway, Lord Luco says, indeed. Great. Now I'm not going to censor the contradictory comments or the hate comments. I'm tough. I'm a big boy. I can take care of it. Don't feel bad for me, please. Dan the Melon Man 2861 said, this is just an awful take, TBH, about all the people who would go underwater on their mortgages or people planning on the proceeds of their houses for retirement. You can't just slash the real estate market by 30% to help the people with huge earning potential while messing with the people who have no earning potential. And he's positing that boomers and people who are retired have no earning potential. This is true, except for the passive income on their millions of dollars that they have. And then also the equity in their home. And so he's saying that I don't know how selling your house and downgrading would make you go underwater on your mortgage. That doesn't make any sense to me, unless you were just a total idiot when you did it. And planning on the proceeds of your house to go to retirement. If you never sell the house, you never get the proceeds. So that's kind of contradicting what I'm saying. And so I think that slashing the real estate market, while it could hurt some people, it's going to be more beneficial, especially the rising generation who is going to be paying the Social Security tax and Medicaid tax for the next generation. So I don't agree with this. No, I thought about it, but I just can't see that. I think we need to always be helping the rising generation. And someone mark that when I'm older, that I make sure I'm helping the rising generation too. Okay. Okay, here. The one who starts talks. It wasn't super related to my video, but he says, I was on Billionaire's Island once with President Clinton, very much back in 2007. So maybe this is a boomer. Yeah, the Epstein thing is kind of a crazy thing. I don't really want to dive into that. It's pretty controversial. But anyway, we can all objectively say that what he was doing on the island was bad, and whoever was there, should go down with the ship, I would say. Maybe not in the same way that Epstein went down, but definitely, have consequences for their actions if it's proven. Sorry, I'm lip smacking. And actually, I'll get to this in a second. One of the comments was stop kicking the table. What I do is I bounce my knee whenever I'm talking, and so that's what you probably were hearing. All right, next. Not Idealist One said there aren't 30 million illegal immigrants. That is the total of the Latin American population. 30 million might have been an exaggeration. That is a talking point of the right wing. Now we know it's at least in the high teens, 20s millions of illegal immigrants. So maybe 30 is a stretch. Regardless, that's still a huge number. Still going to make up, 7 to 10% of the United States population. Well, probably 6 to 8% of the United States population. And so that I don't think that I'm crazy for saying that. And we don't know the exact numbers, especially because the record number of border crossings were in the last couple of years. That data is hard to find, especially because they don't have Social Security numbers. It's not always super easy to find all the ones who kind of get through the cracks. Anyway, let's see. This is kind of a long one. The country, he said it would actually be a net negative on housing. Oh, am I disconnected? My connection unstable? Oh, it looks like we're back. Okay. He's basically saying that it would be a net negative. And I feel like in my video, I weighed all the options, all the factors. We would lose workers. We'd also, more houses would be freed up. But there's also the factor of, BlackRock and large corporations buying up single family homes. Now, I have seen some numbers that less than 1% of single family homes are owned by large corporations. So that might not be as big of a factor as we think. So there's a variety of factors that go into that. But anyway, I feel like I answered it in the rest of the video. So that's kind of an example of maybe someone who didn't watch the full video, just the clip. But I feel like I got into that. Let's see here. Got to all those ones. On my video about SNAP benefits, someone said goated opinion because I think maybe they were someone who recognized that Christians should believe in, helping the poor and needy, right? That's something that we believe in. Now, I do want to get into that. I want to comment on that really quick, and I'll go into this in more depth another time. The thing about SNAP benefits is, yes, we should be helping the poor and the needy. But this is my message. If you are on SNAP benefits, I think it should be your goal to get off them. I think sometimes we get on these benefits and we get complacent and we think like, okay, they're helping me. Like, I'm going to factor this into my life and I'm just going to plan on always having it. The point of, when you're down on your luck means that you're eventually going to be up on your luck later. And so I think the thing that's frustrating those who are opposed to SNAP benefits is these people who feel entitled to it instead of taking accountability for it and making the change to improve your situation and get off these benefits. So that would be the one thing I would say on SNAP. However, I do think it is a good program overall. Okay, Luis Acosta Franco says, and this is on my take about how the government puts too many standards in place, blocking industry and things from happening, kind of blocking the free market sometimes. Luis Acosta Franco says, kind of agree, but also from an outside perspective, I'm guessing he's not from America. All these rules and regulations have made the U.S. the best country in the world. Doesn't mean that it can't improve, but I can imagine most of these rules have a purpose that contribute to the country not sucking so bad. I would agree to that. I would also say, though, that I wouldn't say that housing and business regulations are what made America great, because they weren't always there, especially when the country was building, especially during the Revolutionary War, early America. Now, it is good that we have industry. It's very good for protecting people. But I would say the things that made America great is widespread Christianity, innovation, capitalism, things of that nature are what really made America great, because it made us so much better than every other country because we really are the best. R. Taylor Seattle said, Eradicare. Yes, I was talking about my personal company. It's not called Eradicate. It's called Eradicare because we care about taking care of your bugs. And then said, nice quarter zip. Thank you. It's the trend. Sorry, this is getting a little bit long, but I'm gonna hustle through the rest of these. This one is talking about the boomer. Said, my boomer parents said they were going to downsize, but instead got an even bigger brand new house built. Now, it's good to honor our father and mother. So let's keep that in mind as we're talking about the rising generation. I am hesitant to call people out by name. I just was calling out a group. So keep that in mind. We don't need to be mean to anyone specifically. However, if your needs are going, why are you building a bigger house? Just doesn't make sense to me. Unless you're building like a giant ranch house, but still, that's so much area to walk, right? I'd want everything close by. I can walk to the kitchen in 2 steps, bathroom in 2 steps. Anyway, someone said, ew, I don't know if they're commenting on my appearance. If so, that's offensive, but I'll get over it. Scott Oliver said, I agree. My knees hurt. This is a boomer who's on our side, guys. He said, my knees hurt. I don't want to go upstairs anymore. I'm only 25 and I don't want to go upstairs. So I'm with him on that one. Got some laughing emojis. More comments on this video. Joke's on you. I'm 45. I have a house worth nothing and no kids. Well, TN785, I'm sorry about that. Hopefully you can turn that around. You still got time. Your life's only about halfway over. You can make it happen. Maybe not the kids thing, maybe adoption. But I don't know about that. But you can definitely find someone and change your financial situation. I hope you do that. Scarborough said, stop tapping the desk. Okay. That's something that's a problem for me. All right, I'll stop. Cam said, I feel like many fail to recognize that appreciating value in housing does not necessarily mean that they will have more or better options should they sell. Almost all housing has gone up. No. Yes, housing has gone up historically. There was one tiny top point in 2008 where housing went down in value. Other than that, it has always risen historically. But they're saying that they won't have better options when they sell. If all the houses go up in value, there's always a need for people to be in houses. And so that the value does benefit you later when you sell, because there's always going to be a need for houses. And so you'll always be able to sell it. It may take some time, may be hard, but it is something that you can sell unless you have like a multi-million-dollar mansion, Michael Jordan or whatever. It is usually something that you can sell if it's a reasonably sized home. Then Nick the Majestic said, now tie in how local governments are addicted to the property tax and the entire civil service sector needs it like a drug. That is crazy. There is a lot of taxes. I agree with you on that. That is unfortunate. And property taxes are some of the worst, especially because you own your home now and you're still paying taxes on it. I don't know. That's just kind of weak to me, but I digress. This is kind of a funny one. He says, you act like the boomers are a hive mind that all make decisions together as a collective. Name one individual that would take $300,000 less for their house when they go to sell it. No one would, regardless of the generation. The thing no one wants to admit is that the government wants the home prices to keep going up because it means increased tax revenue year over year. All right, dude. I'm getting some like 65-year-old vibes from this. Could be wrong. You're right. Taking $300,000 less for your house is definitely not something that is objectively good for a person. But the situation we're in America right now, there's going to have to be sacrifices made. The rising generation has nothing to sacrifice. They have nothing. I mean, they would be happy to make sacrifices. They're already making the sacrifice of their time, their labor. They're going to college, things like that. Like, in order to fix the situation, especially with Social Security and the rising housing, decreased purchasing power, rising cost of housing, somebody's gonna have to kind of take it on the chin. And I think we can try to spread that around as much as possible. But that's something that needs to be thought of. Why should they sell their house? To downgrade so they don't have to go up their stairs. It's also partly due to keeping up with the Jones mentality that is so pervasive with the me generation. They don't have a bone of empathy left in their body. Also, most Gen X people are now boomer light and are worse than their parents. Yeah. Let's keep it nice, but yeah, you might be right about that. Let's see. He's not mentioning that the people who boomers would sell it will try to get an ROI for the 1.1 million that the boomer got cheated on. Oh, they aren't buying because people aren't buying because they don't have money, not because they were just short of funds. Don't have any money, not because they're just short of funds. Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is we have to keep the prices down. We can't just like dip them. Everyone buys all the Gen Z buys a house and they go back up. That's not fair either, right? It has to stay. I mean, it can grow, slowly, housing prices, but it's not going to work if they just dip and then jump. Old folks are going to need that money when they sell their house. Old folks' homes are going to need that money. When they sell their house. Yeah, that you just have to do some planning there. But if you sell your house for $1 million and you're only going to live 5 more years, I think the old folks' home will be all right with, $100,000 a year instead of, whatever. Anyway, laughing faces. Boomers don't want the market to go down, so they magically force the market to stay up. Explain how they do that, genius. Wow. With government regulations blocking the building of new homes and, large corporations buying up single-family homes and raising the prices themselves. Kurt. Aji, this is someone who's commented multiple times, says, great take. I can tell you have charisma and intelligence to become huge. Thank you, man. That's not necessarily the goal of this, but I do appreciate the compliment. And I thank you for your comment. It means a lot. Boomer sold the world. That's kind of a general statement, but that is kind of what I'm getting at. Shut up. Ouch, dude. Thanks, Ryan D. Money does not belong to the individual. Got a commie on stream. Someone sent a squirt bottle emoji when I was talking about North Sentinel Island. Apparently they want people giving birth on dirt floors and not having toilets. Trying to bring cultures into the fold of society created the problems we have now. I would argue that it is the only thing solving the problems we have now. So I think that people say like preserve the culture. Like let's have them have a better standard of life first, not be hungry or thirsty. Always the same wrong numbers and same talking points. I think that's in response to illegal immigrant numbers. I will walk that back. That 30 million number might be wrong. I'm sorry. But I think that my points are still valid, regardless of if it's 20 or 30 million. Third option, we make them legal citizens so they aren't treated like slaves instead of using masked federal agents to rip them from their children and their family and homes. And they have to be paid fairly. And he's saying they pay more into taxes. I don't think they pay more into taxes. But yeah, I think that the cruelty of ICE is definitely bad. So that's something we need to think about. But we also have to enforce the laws of America. So there's both sides to that. Same comment from Presso. Same comment from Slamperd. Let's see. And then Wizard Dude said, I'm a psychedelic researcher. I cured cancer and went to prison for it. I said, drop the formula. He said, it's called Rick Simpson oil. So hopefully that doesn't get me taken down. Apparently that cures cancer. I looked it up. It's some sort of like marijuana thing. I don't know about that. That sounds like a little bit of hocus pocus to me, but if it's true and it actually cures cancer, then, I guess I'm a naysayer. So my apologies to you, man. Let's see here. It's not a lack of houses, it's a lack of houses on the open market. Large corporations, investors buy them up. Yeah, that is a problem in America. However, it's less than 1%. I think that, there are other ways that we can solve the problems. Now, I think we should prevent them from buying single family homes. That is a policy. I don't think that would immediately solve the problem. Yeah, and Mr. T agrees with me on that take. Yeah, rhetoric says if we stop increasing the amount of people who need housing in the country by millions each year, bar corporations from purchasing single family homes and build more houses, housing would suddenly become a lot more affordable. Very true. One caveat to that is we should still have children and families. That is so important. That is like the key to happiness. And so, while that is a take, I think that we should definitely still have children and families. Okay, sorry, that was kind of long. That's because that's all the comments from every video I've posted for the last multiple weeks. There will not be that many in the future. I want that segment to be around 10 minutes. And if there gets to be too many comments, then I will just stop that segment at the beginning. So if you want a comment to be featured on stream, get it in now, okay? Because I hope that comments will increase as I get better and better at this. And, stop doing so many filler words and shaking the table so much. All right, let's get into our actual stories of today. So first thing is going to be our faith section. So something that I see, something that I think a lot of people fail to understand is the concept of faith, what it is, and how you show it. So the first thing is I see a lot of people who their debate for religion is where is the evidence? Like, where is the evidence that the religion is true? And that's the problem. Like religion, the point of religion is a lack of evidence, right? If there was just a generally proven one religion is true, then everyone would be a part of it. And that removes something called agency, which is crucial, which is the freedom to choose. And so something that bothers me is religious apologists looking for things like archaeological evidence. And while that is good, and when I see that on my feed, like there's archaeological evidence for Christianity, the Shroud of Turin or the Dead Sea Scrolls, like I see this and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Like, I mean, that gives me a little bit of like, ooh, nice. Like, cause you always like seeing, something that you already believe is true. However, I would posit that maybe those people who are searching could be lacking faith, because that's not like what's supposed to convert you to religion is newfound evidence and things like that. It's supposed to be a personal journey where you receive word from God that things are true. And that's where faith, and you start with that little seed of belief and and hope, and it grows into this faith, this enduring faith. You learn more about it. You study the scriptures. You converse with God through prayer and revelation. And that's what builds the faith. And that's why there will never be full proof of one church being true. And I can promise that until Christ comes again and the earth is renewed, and then every knee shall bow and tongue shall confess that he is the Lord. But until then, there will never be enough archaeological evidence to indisputably prove something is true. And so if you're searching for that or you're waiting for that to join a religion, my friend, you're out of luck. You've got to recognize that is never going to be the case. And so you need to go off faith. Now, how you build that faith is like what I talked about, conversing with God through prayer, him conversing back to you through revelation, reading the scriptures, learning more about religions. I don't see any problem at all with studying all the religions. Go ahead and do it. Just don't take too long. I know someone who's like, yeah, I'm going to study all the religions. Like, it doesn't take that long to like get a good grasp of all the religions. Like, I mean, maybe a few months, right? But this guy's like been studying for 10 years. I'm like, dude, you got to make a decision. They say crap or get off the pot already. All right. That's not to make light of studying religion. I think it's important, and I still do it, even though I am committed to one. I still, study other religions and different things from that. And there hasn't been anything convincing enough to me to change my mind. So if you have something, go ahead. But I don't know. It's going to be hard for you. But anyway, and getting into faith, I think that faith is actually the reason for goodness. We look at the morals of America and of the world of like what is right and wrong. And it's hard, especially for atheists, to like say, where did that come from? Or not psychologists, philosophers will say that it comes from an innate goodness in humans. And I would say, where does that come from? I would say that comes from God and Jesus Christ, who gave us that innate goodness within us. And that faith in him is what leads us to be good, right? Because we have reason to be good because our Father in heaven and Jesus Christ were good, and we love them, and that's what they want us to do, and so that's what we need to do. They talk about actually I'll get into it another day, but so yeah, I think faith is the reason for goodness, and it leads to it. And I spend a lot of time on here talking about like different policies and politics, and it's really contentious, and there's a lot of things to factor in, and we try and decide which policy is the best for which country and what would help the world and what is the that kind of stuff. There's thousands and thousands of people who debate on this every single day, and we have whole systems set in place for how to figure this out. And I think what politics is doing basically is just trying to like just damage control the world. And that might sound a little bit like pessimistic because I'm saying that, that politics cannot solve our problems, but I don't think it can. I don't think policy can solve problems. The only thing that's really going to save the world is an individual change in each person on the earth. If you think about it, I have an abundance mindset. I think there is enough to go around for everybody. There's enough of everything to go around on the earth. God has given us plenty of everything, plenty of water, plenty of food, plenty of knowledge. There's people that have all the ideas in their brain that just need them to come out. But I just think that we are not like tapping into that potential because we don't have faith. And I would say we don't have faith in Jesus Christ. And that would, if everyone was converted to Jesus Christ and they wanted to do good, I think they would. I kind of talked about this a second ago about SNAP benefits, and we should always look out for the poor and needy. But I think it's the duty of the poor and needy to try and change their situation. And I think Christ would want you to do that as well, because it feels so much better to be a net contributor than a net detractor. So, for example, someone who receives, this is just a basic example. Obviously, there's like a lot more that factors into it. There's a lot more that factors into it, but every person on earth is either a net contributor, a net detractor, or a net neutral. And basically what that means is, are you giving more to society than you're getting? People who pay a ton of taxes are getting more or are giving more to society than they're getting back in benefits. Or someone who, is a student on FAFSA with SNAP benefits, and this isn't to disparage them, but they are a net detractor. They are receiving more from society than they're giving. And that's always going to be the case. It's never going to be perfectly equal, except, obviously, maybe in heaven. But there's always going to be this thing that you're going to recognize. And my message to the net contributors is, you're doing a good job. Feel free to contribute more. Feel free to give to the poor and needy, give charity, give of your excess as much as you can to help other people. And then what I would say to the other side, the net detractors, is like, let's try to change our situation. You have people helping you. You've got people rallying behind you, lifting you up. Like, let's try to make a change here and get to where we can be the one helping people. And if everyone had that mindset of, I'm not entitled to this help I'm getting, whether it be, from an organization, a government thing, or if it just be from another person, I'm not entitled to this. I'm grateful for this. I'm going to try to use this help to improve my situation and go out there and make a difference in the world. And I think if everyone had that mindset, which I think is a godly Christian mindset of wanting to help people, not necessarily always be the one receiving help, that would solve a lot of problems in America. If we just had that drive. I know a lot of people who I wouldn't say are like incredibly high IQ. I wouldn't say that I'm incredibly high IQ. I wouldn't say, and these people, maybe they don't have, all these super hard skills, but they just like want a better life. They believe in God and Jesus. They want a better life. They want to improve. They know that God will help them to do that if they put in some effort, and they have great lives. They're happy. maybe they're not billionaires, maybe they're not millionaires, but they're just happy people. And you don't need that to be happy. You just need to have a good life and to be a contributor. Because I think giving is something that makes people happy. And so that's something that I would talk about, or I would argue, is that, like, let's try to lift ourselves up here and not feel sorry for ourselves anymore. Take some accountability, take some action, and make some stuff happen. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, and that would save the world if everyone did that. If everyone did that, there would be so much more giving. You probably wouldn't even need, well, maybe you'd still need some taxes just for like the military and things, but I think that there would be so much giving that you wouldn't really need that. You wouldn't really need to force people. And I'll get into that here in a second here. Let's see here. Actually, I will talk about this just for a couple minutes. I can go more into depth on this in another time. My last thing is, I think doing good things is great. I would ask people, what is your motivation for doing good things? And we see a hierarchy of motivation. The first level, the worst, I would say the worst level, is doing things out of fear or being forced, right? It's, if I don't do this, I'm gonna end up in a bad spot. So I have to do this, right? And that motivation can be powerful. We've seen it throughout history be powerful, but it leads to resentment and it leads to things not working out for you in the long run. So fear would be kind of like the baseline. Hope for reward would be the next one up, where it's like, I'm going to do this because I know I'm going to get rewarded for it. A lot of times that's something we see in like younger kids, whereas they do things just if they're going to get a reward. We do see that in kind of the hedonistical society of America today as well, and the rest of the world. So I would caution those, like, while that can be a motivation, it's definitely better than fear. If you ever end up not getting the reward, you'll stop doing the good action. And so I would say be cautious on that. And obviously that's something that we all struggle with. I still sometimes do things for rewards as well. The next one is duty, I would say is the next one up, whereas you just do things because you just think you should. You think it's a good thing to do. And I would say that's a great one. That's definitely something that can motivate you and propel you to doing good things. Definitely better than always seeking a reward. But if you have a bad day or something happens, that duty, that sense of duty can go away, or you feel wronged. And so, while that is good, it can be a little shaky. Next up is faith. I would say that you're doing things because you believe that it's the right thing to do. It's almost like duty, but it's, based in a higher power. And that way, and the thing about that is, when you get wronged, that faith perseveres, because that despite the hardships and trials in your life, that still is a good thing overall. And then the best one is charity or love. And I would say this is the ultimate motivator. And what I try to have my motivation for doing everything, you do things because you love God and you love your neighbor. And that never goes away, right? That love should never fade, despite what happens in your life. And you love them. What's the word? What's the word? What is it where you love someone just because? Oh my goodness. Brain fart. Unconditionally. That love is unconditional, right? You have unconditional love for your Heavenly Father and for Jesus Christ and for your neighbor and for your spouse. And that love propels you to do good things for them, to help them, to show affection, to worship, things like that. And that is the motivator that will never go away, because no matter what happens in your life, that two-way connection of love between you and your Heavenly Father and you and your neighbor will always persevere. And so I would say, to all my listeners out there, or people who watch this later in a clip, have your motivation be love. Force it to be love. And you will, when times are bad, times are tough, that motivation won't fade. Okay, great. Last thing I want to talk about, and this is kind of like the most hot topic issue. So I'm going to try to put those little things on the bottom where you can like scroll to a certain spot. If you just want to hear about the last thing, you can just scroll here. At about 35 minutes. The last thing I want to talk about is the Somalian fraud. So Nick Shirley, I don't know if you guys know who that is. He basically, what happened with the Minnesota Somali fraud scandal is Nick Shirley is a YouTuber guy, kind of an independent journalist. On December 26th, he posted a viral video alleging that there is widespread fraud at Somali-run daycare and social services providers in Minnesota. Man, it would be cold to be there. I would not want to be over there. It gained massive attention online and was amplified by national political figures, thrusting the issue into broader public debate. So basically, this guy named Nick Shirley shined some light on widespread fraud in Minnesota. And I think he's trying to shine it on the rest of the world as well. But basically, what happened is the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI responded to this coverage, which is kind of crazy because of its virality. They investigated that activity, and they found, alleged fraud in multiple funded federally and state funded programs. So this is an example. I've talked about this before of, tax money being taken and used for nefarious purposes, used fraudulently. Feeding Our Future was an example of one of them. At the end of 2025, 78 people were charged. 50 had pled guilty on the Feeding Our Future case. And so this is kind of a continuation of that case that happened a little while ago. In terms of how much money was stolen, some suggest as high as $9 billion. And so that's crazy. Tons of people were affected. And the thing that sucks is these are like good services, like, housing support, autism therapy services, feeding people. Like, these are the services that these people are using to steal money. Like, that's so bad. That's like even worse than other kinds of fraud, because you're using, an innocent good thing as your shield. Anyway, I don't want to, but they're saying this is predominantly a problem with Somalian Americans, which is people from the African country of Somalia. And obviously this is getting into a huge political thing with, both sides going crazy about it, arguing. I think that no matter who, if you're talking to a reasonable person, they'll say that the fraud is objectively bad. And this kind of gets into my whole abundance mindset is I think that there's enough, but people are stealing it. I think we have enough money to give to social services to help the people who actually need help. But when you have people who are entitled, who don't need the help, and who steal, it takes the money from those people who should actually be receiving the help. And so that's one of my biggest problems is we just can't have fraud. There's just not enough for fraud. There's enough for everyone, but not enough for fraud, if you know what I mean. Now, obviously, they're going back and forth about the accuracy of these claims. The fact that there's any evidence at all, is obviously very bad to me. But innocent until proven guilty. We need official convictions on this before anything crazy happens. But that's basically a summary of what's going on there. There are some arguments against that. This is even bad. There's things like white guilt, like, we've been colonizing and stealing from people. So, we owe this money to them, this $8 billion to these Somalian people. I think that's nonsense. And I think anyone who believes that's kind of a crazy take. So I'm not going to even really engage with that side of the argument. What I will engage with is, like that mindset of the hoarding. And I think that mindset of like, it's okay for me to steal or stealing is fine comes a lot from people's perceived, or maybe not perceived, but the wealth inequality in the world, right? The top one that you always talk about here about the 1%, or like, the top percent have most of the money or whatever. And they're how the wealth inequality has gotten worse and worse and worse throughout time. And one thing that they want to have happen is they want to tax the crap out of these people. And while that does seem like just kind of a fix all, like an easy to fix the solution, the problem is the people who would be taxing these people are the people, right? Congress, they're all in the top 1%. They all have millions of dollars from insider trading. And so we're urging these people like, hey, you need to tax these people who have tons of money. And they don't want that because they want to be able to avoid the taxes as well. And the greed is crazy of these people. I think Congress isn't that hard of a job, right? Dude, and I think it's cushy, right? So the fact that they're like insider trading at this cushy job, it just boggles my mind, like your salary is basically not earned, and your insider, you're betraying the people who trusted you, who voted for you by stealing. So anyway, I don't want to like be too condemning. I don't want to condemn anyone specifically, but I think that's just slimy, and I think it's just as bad as the fraud that the Somalians are doing. It's all. I guess they're not using. Well, but they're using their trust as the trust we gave to them as public servants to take advantage of us. by insider trading. People like, and it's on both sides. It's everyone up there is doing it. And so I think, those are both terrible, equal. I mean, just as bad. And so all that fraud, that needs to be, dealt with sharpness. And when I say sharpness, I don't mean like violence. I just mean like it needs to be done now, like cut it off, have it done with the fraud. And but one thing I do want to say is that when your answer is always like tax more, it breeds resentment for those people who are the ones who are going to be getting taxed. And I know we can say like these people, like they deserve it. They're not even that good. They're not even that smart. Like they made their $1 billion. It's nepotism, or, they got lucky or things like that. And, whether or not that's true, when you forcibly take things from people, regardless of if they deserve it to be taken or not, it's going to breed resentment. And I think it's going to end up being a net negative overall. And so what I would say, and I kind of talked about this earlier, is these people, and my urging to them is give liberally. You do not I don't even know how I would spend $1 billion. I couldn't even imagine it. I would never, I would, first of all, why are you still working after $1 billion? I mean, like after you hit a certain amount, isn't the point of like making all this money so you can stop working and just like hang out with your family and just like golf? I don't know. That's what I do. I would just golf every day. That'd be awesome. And I'd go in my hot tub, and I'd have a regular sized house and a hot tub, and I would have a membership to a golf course or something. That's all I'd want, And I get those are like, that's pretty like, ooh, hoity-toity type stuff. But that's like my goal. I don't want anything more than that. And I see these billionaires and they're like, their life is miserable. Like they've been divorced 4 times. All their kids don't like them. It's like, you have all the resources and you can't like make your life good. It's just frustrating to me. And then they're stingy. And then because they're so bitter. And so I would say to them, like, focus on giving, and try to find things that you're passionate about to give to. And I think like people like Bill Gates, like they give a lot, and that's impressive to me. And I just think that if instead of forcing them to give, if we encourage them and they do it of their own free will, you'll get all the benefit that those taxes would have given without the resentment of taking their money forcibly. And so that's what I would say is to these very wealthy individuals, like give a little bit. And also, instead of working so hard on making more money, because you already have more than you could ever spend, like spend some more time with your family and like really get them to like you, I would think. And if you're not the type of person who's likable, you got to make that change inside yourself so that these people like you more. It's just what has to happen. And I think you have the time and the means to do that. You have unlimited money for a therapist. So anyway, I don't want to be too critical of, different types of people. And one thing that I'll never do is condemn someone, like say that someone is going to hell or not. And this is my caution to all of you who are seeking religious guidance. Here are a few things to look out for in a church. If your church sounds like this, you might be in a church that isn't true. If your church feels comfortable condemning specific people to hell based on their actions, Jesus said that only he will judge. And so if someone says that to you, either they're not representing their church properly or that church is bad. And so I would caution on that. Another thing, the mega church thing, if all they do is talk about begging you for money and they don't talk about anything else, bad. And then the last thing is if they talk extremely critically of other religions, they say that they're, the spawn of Satan or it's a demonic religion or things like that. Also bad. So just keep those things in mind. And that's not to say that we can't be critical of other religions, especially if they're violent or if they do things that are bad. But I would just caution you, if you're picking out a church and you hear them being negative about other religions, instead of focusing on the positive parts of theirs, that's just something to look out for. We have one chat. I'm going to get to this chat and then we're probably going to call it a day here. Let's see what we got here. 1 second. It says, I agree increasing taxes for rich people might make them resentful, but how is that different than the more poor and middle class people resenting them right now? Either way, people are angry. Great question from Annie Shad 2600, my number one commenter. So they're basically saying that, increasing taxes for rich people might make them resentful. But how is that different from the poor and class people resenting them right now? Either way, people are angry. So basically what I was saying is obviously the low and middle class already resent the rich. And so some sort of giving has to be done from the rich to the poor. There needs to be that transition of wealth in order to alleviate that resentment. That just has to happen. And what I would say is, instead of forcing it to happen, what needs to happen is there needs to be a change in these rich people, in this top 1% or even top 10%. And they need to give of their own free will. Because what that's going to do is it's going to alleviate the resentment of the younger people who hate them, but it's also going to remove the resentment that would have been garnered by the rich people, because now, instead of being forced to give, they're giving of their own free will, which would, instead of making them resentful, would make them happy because they're changing people's lives. And so what really needs to happen is a change of heart on the individual level of all these people. That's what's going to actually solve the problem. And pessimists will say that that's impossible, that could never happen. I think it's possible. I think it could happen. It just needs to happen. And that's why I say the ultimate solution for the world would just be a conversion of everyone to Jesus Christ and everyone following his teachings. And his teachings are not to crusade and kill people who don't believe, right? So people say, oh, Christianity was bad. Yeah, bad stuff happened. Christians did bad things. That's not what Christianity is. And people telling you otherwise are wrong. I've read a lot of Christian texts. I would know about this. So anyway, that's what I'd say. Great question. Any other questions before I go? Any of my chatters? Okay, looks like not. Sorry if the show is a little tedious today. Don't feel like you have to watch the whole thing. You can just skip around. But it's been great being with you today. Oh yeah. So again, sorry about Thursday. One person watching. I was sick. I fell asleep and I was sick. So forgive me on that. I'm better now. All is well in Zion. And we are all good to go there. Well, thank you so much for being here. I want to wish you guys all a great rest of your evening. And if you're watching this later, a great rest of whatever day of the week it is. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.